Happy Sunday! My name is Rory Houlihan. I ran for U.S. Senate this spring 2016 to stop the ticking time bombs and put our economy on track for a bright new day instead of all things ending. Let me educate you on the ticking time bombs and give you the rest of the story. Part 9. All recessions start with the poor and end with the poor. I also know after 18 years in retail that all businesses live and die on cash flows. When the cash flows, the businesses live, and when the cash stops, businesses die. Simple. So demand determines supply. Without demand, there can be no supply. Demand is a check and balance to supply. So I'm a natural demand focused person by my retail background. I'm also demand focused by my Catholic or Christian background. Jesus clearly laid out how to have economic stability and create heaven on earth in Matthew 20. Here he starts off with the kingdom of heaven is like a man. Should we start our president's expectations with a well-run country is like a president? Now, what does the man do? He goes out 5 times, scouring the land, making sure that everybody who wants to work has a job. So, shouldn't the first step of a president to make sure that we have a full employment policy, that everybody who wants to work has a job? Should not the president also focus on full employment of everyone, whether they are white, black, Asian, or Hispanic? You know, when capital is not used, capital does not suffer or starve. It is people and only people, not the billionaire's capital. People are what is important. It is people who build our roads and highways. It is people who work in our businesses. It is people who fight and die for our country. People are what is important. The beginning of our Constitution reads, "We the people," and not "we the people and corporations." The 14th Amendment protects only the people's rights and not the corporations' rights. Corporations are created by the state and are artificial persons by law and have not been endowed by our Creator with God-given rights. Back to Matthew. Then the man agrees to a fair day's wage. So the second thing a president should do is create a fair minimum wage that will be a living wage, a wage that supports you and a child without government support. Why is that important? Well, Jesus alludes to step number 3. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. All recessions start with the poor and end with the poor. Now, this is based on over 200 years of data. All recessions start with the poor and end with the poor. The poorest consume at 100%. They have no savings to fall back on. Coming out of the recession, the prices start off low, but prices increase while their wages don't. Without incremental minimum wage increases, the poor are forced to go into debt. So the poor are the first to go into debt. Because they are poor, the loans they receive are high interest loans. They're predatory, which is impossible to pay back. So they're tapped out and trapped and can no longer consume. What we see in the start of a recession is a consumption collapse, starting with the poor, followed by a banking collapse because the poor aren't able to pay back their predatory loans. The solution is simple: incremental increases in minimum wage. So the poor don't go into debt and don't get tapped out and trapped by debt like credit cards, payday lenders, and shady mortgages. The new ticking time bomb is student loans. How wealthy are you when you first start working? Now, most of us, including me, started off in low-paying entry-level jobs. Why do we know that all recessions start with the poor and end with the poor? Well, there was a period of about almost 40 years that we had no recessions, like from 1939 to 1979. We see in the 1970s Nixon changing the game, and from 1980 then on we had recession after Reagan completed the change. And also in the 120 years before this period was the same, ending with the Great Depression. I studied business cycles in college, or the boom bust cycle, and saw this correlation. There is now a new supporting data from the 1980s recession on. But when we first looked at it, 1980s was the only data point. Now we have more. What sets this period apart from all the other two that are in front and back of it is that this period had incremental minimum wage increases. Minimum wage increases solves poverty and solves the boom-bust business cycles, stabilizing our economy, which is good for business. A stable economy is good for consumers. It is good for workers. But there are some businessmen who do benefit greatly from having a boom-bust cycle, but they tend to be predatory. During the 1980s to 1992, there was no minimum wage increase. Instead, government provided an ever larger negative income tax, a tax credit, though better for business. I have to agree, increasing taxpayer subsidies of labor does help out a business. Tax credits are just a shot in the arm, but not a solution or substitute to minimum wage increases. Tax credits helps the poor, but only minimum wage increases solves poverty because all folks and businesses depend on cash flows. In short, you make the poor strong and independent and not government dependent, as conservative Republicans do, like Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell do with their choosing tax credits instead of private sector minimum wage increases, because it is so much better for businesses. Quite honestly, only conservative pet always lower price businesses truly gain, while superior goods businesses lose, because superior goods business producers pay higher wages. So they and their employees get to foot the bill. I don't think that is a good solution for the long run. To chump those that pay the people well is never something that you want to do. Folks, the last line of Matthew 20 is the most telling, too. For many be called, but few chosen. You aren't a great and good leader by making yourself strong and powerful. You make yourself a great and good leader by making your people strong and independent. You do this by starting with the weakest. For like a chain, a country is no stronger than its weakest link. Today, many of our politicians are choosing to follow atheist Ayn Rand instead of Jesus, and that's the problem. You have a good and blessed Sunday, and just think about it. Goodbye.